Hello and welcome to Day One Pass Podcast, episode 566. We are marching towards 600 episodes, man.
We are indeed.
That is wild.
A little wild.
And then we will wrap it up.
We were going to wrap it up on the last like three milestones.
Yeah. How you doing, Matt? You're the only one with us? How's it going?
I'm doing all right. Yeah. How about you? And your Tim Hortons retro mug, I can see you on webcam there.
Drinking the Tim Hortons. Not Tim Hortons tea though. I've never really bought Tim Hortons tea for the home. I don't even know if it is.
Really?
It? Yeah. I mean, I'm good with most teas because I mostly drink like a English breakfast or something, and it's hard to kind of have a really bad English breakfast. And I know tea purists will come out and be like, "Yeah, you can find some." Yeah, sure, I get it. There's some ones that aren't great, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's just slightly flavored hot water. You know.
Well, let me ask you a question. It's hard to have a bad one, but have you ever had a particularly good one?
Sure. Some of the fancier ones can be pretty tasty, and you're just like, damn, that's good. I do like Earl Greys. I do drink some Earl Grey. I don't think there's a difference. Again, the tea purists might come after me, but I don't think there's a difference between. I don't think there's much of a difference between English breakfast and Orange Pico.
I was going to ask what your stance on Orange Pico was. Actually,
I think you blind taste test someone, and I don't think they'll actually be able to tell. I don't
is
know
Orange
why it's
Pico
called Orange Pico.
Literally like citrus? Is there literally?
I don't know.
In there?
I actually don't know. I have no idea.
So there's not a place so you go out and you're like, oh hell yeah, like I'm driving by all the places I get tea. Which one are you stopping in for? Specifically for the tea.
Oh, okay. McDonald's. Now they use Higgins and Burke Orange Pico.
Yeah.
And I particularly like it. I do not like Starbucks tea, which is an English breakfast. But I don't for whatever reason, their tea is like more bitter or something. I don't know what it is. Maybe I need to put more sugar in it. I don't know.
I do find Starbucks. I'm like an old man when I go to Starbucks. I'm just like, can I just have a black coffee? And they're like, what size? I was like, big. I don't know. Like I don't know venti and grande and all that stuff. And I actually was not very partial to it. However, they had a blonde roast one time I was there. That was pretty good. But what I've switched to, which I don't normally go to Starbucks, but what I've switched to if I do end up at a Starbucks is I get their cold brew. And that's pretty good. You want to do a cold? Do they do cold brew teas?
Well, iced tea. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like a Nestea.
Yeah, but that's not. They don't really serve that at like a Starbucks per se.
What is the? Because the American version's like a sweetened tea or an unsweetened tea.
They don't. There's something they don't do. It's either they don't put sugar in it or they don't put lemon in it or something. It's something like that. I think it's sugar. Yeah, they don't do sweetened tea. Although you can get Nestea and it has sugar in it.
Yeah, well, I mean, Nestea is kind of in a weird spot right now.
Because
like,
they're not in Canada.
Well, no, they are but it's only available in juice boxes right now, at least at my local grocery store.
That's bizarre, right?
They don't have any cans. They don't have no bottles that I've seen.
Iced tea in a can isn't great. I know people like the Arizonas; those might be good. I don't have those all too often, but like Nestea in a can was never fantastic. It was better in a bottle, I think. I
don't know if I prefer it. I like Nestea in a can, but I hate Snapple in a can. I like Snapple in a bottle, which is weird. I don't know if it's weird. Maybe it isn't, but.
Mm-hmm. All right, Matt, let's get into it. Do you have a video game fun fact for us?
Heck yeah, I do. In fact, I have potentially two. We'll see how long the one goes because I did two bits of research. So this is on two different handhelds and depends on if we cover both or just one today. And they are the Neo Geo Pocket and the WonderSwan. So these are some handhelds that I did not know existed, and these are not devices from the 70s or the 80s or even the early 90s. These are getting into the 2000s, bumping up against the 2000s here, which I'm surprised about. So what is this Neo Geo Pocket? Let's jump into there. So the SNK Neo Geo Pocket / the Neo Geo Pocket Color. This is SNK's first handheld console. The monochrome Neo Geo Pocket launched in Japan on the 28th of October 1998, with the color Neo Geo Pocket Color following on the 19th of March 1999 in Japan, and then eventually reaching North America on the 6th of August, 1999. And then a slimmer version called the new Neo Geo Pocket Color was actually a revision, and that was released in October of 1999. So the system used a 16-bit Toshiba TLCS 900H CPU with a Zilog Z80 for sound. Love electronic component names. 12 kilobytes of RAM, and a non-backlit classic 2.6-inch reflective LCD capable of 160 by 152 resolution. And on the color model, it supported color, of course, specifically 146 colors on screen out of a 4096 color palette. The color version improved on the monochrome design, but kept backwards compatibility with the earlier games. The original monochrome model ran for about 20 hours on battery, using just 2 AAA batteries. However, the color model switched to 2 AA batteries and a reflective TFT screen rather than that LCD I mentioned before. This allowed it to extend playtime to around 40 hours. Inside, there was also a small CR2032 coin cell battery that preserved save data and the internal clock. Now, what's interesting about this thing is it has unique controls. So instead of a standard D-pad, the Pocket featured a micro-switched clicky stick, is what it was referred to. This 8-direction stick mimicked...
Clicky stick?
Clicky stick, yes. Because this 8-direction stick mimicked an arcade joystick and allowed for precise input for fighting games. The stick was actually, even though it was like a kind of a, I don't know if I want to call it a new invention, but the stick became so loved that later gamepads, such as the GameCube's C-Stick, actually drew inspiration from it. The Neo Geo Pocket included a basic PDA-style menu as well. You didn't just sort of put a game in, press a button, and then the game booted up. This PDA-style menu included a clock, calendar, and alarm, and even a horoscope generator. You would input your birthday, and then it would generate you horoscopes on various categories. I don't know much about horoscopes, but apparently there are categories inside of horoscopes. The SNK also offered a link cable to connect 2 Neo Geo Pocket units to interface the Pocket Color with Sega's Dreamcast. Now, only a handful of titles supported the Dreamcast link. The Dreamcast wiki lists cross-system pairs such as Capcom vs. SNK, with SNK versus Capcom Match of the Millennium, Capcom versus SNK 2 with Card Fighters 2, The King of Fighters Evolution with Battle de Paradis, assuming that's how you say that. It might be just Paradise, and others. SNK also demonstrated a short-range wireless adapter at the 1999 Tokyo Game Show. Now, because the monochrome Pocket was quickly replaced, it only received 9 games. Now remember, this is just the monochrome version. These are all backwards compatible, of course, if you did buy the Pocket Color. The Color model built a stronger catalog, much stronger in fact, 73 games, mostly built by SNK themselves, including Metal Slug First Mission/Second Mission, The King of Fighters R2, Fatal Fury, First Contact, SNK vs. Capcom Match of the Millennium, Card Fighters Clash, Pac-Man, and Sonic Pocket Adventure, which is pretty cool. Third-party collaborations from Sega resulted in some games such as the Sonic Pocket Adventure. Capcom had, of course, come in with the SNK versus Capcom crossovers. And Namco, that partnership resulted in Pac-Man, which actually was a game that was packaged with a plastic ring to restrict the joystick to just 4 directions. Now, games initially shipped in miniature clamshell cases with colorful artwork resembling Neo Geo AES boxes, but SNK USA later moved to cheaper cardboard boxes. The color system was available in several finishes, however, such as Platinum Blue, Carbon Black, and Camouflage Blue. The design even won Japan's 1998 Good Design Award. SNK sold over 25,000 Pocket Color units in Japan and more than 100,000 in Europe by the end of 1999. However, it didn't do so well in the USA, capturing only 2% of the US handheld market by May of 2000. Now, critics praised its build quality, micro-switched stick, and strong software library. Unfortunately, eventually, SNK discontinued the line following the company's acquisition and financial troubles back in 2001 Nevertheless, the Neo Geo Pocket Color remains beloved among collectors for its unique controls and arcade-quality titles. Many of its games have actually been re-released on modern platforms as well through the Neo Geo Pocket Color Selection Volume 1/2 compilations. So this thing, of course, was going head-to-head with the Game Boy, and so was this other thing, the Bandai WonderSwan Monochrome, and then, of course, they have a color version as well called the WonderSwan Color/Swan Crystal.
Jeez.
So, what was it? These are a Japanese-only handheld line by Bandai, developed with Gunpei Yokoi Koto Laboratory. Excuse me. Yokoi was actually the person that created Nintendo's first Game Boy. He was involved in the design of that thing. Unfortunately, Yokoi was involved in the development of the new handheld, but he actually died sadly in a car accident before this handheld was released in 1997. So the monochrome WonderSwan launched on the 4th of March 1999, followed by the WonderSwan Color on the 9th of December 2000, and the improved Swan Crystal on the 12th of July 2002. Bandai hoped to capture the market share from Nintendo's Game Boy by offering long battery life, and it was long, we'll get to that, as well as a very low price. Now, the original model used a 16-bit NEC V30 MZ, let's add some more letters to this, CPU, clocked at 3.072 megahertz, and displayed up to 8 shades of gray on a reflective LCD. Its most distinctive feature was a dual D-pad layout, where buttons were arranged on the left side of the console so that it could be held horizontally or vertically. And this allowed players to create games that were oriented like a book and encourage varied genres. Players could input their name, birth date, and blood type even for games to deliver personalized content. And the
personalized to your blood type?
Personalized to your blood type. Yeah, a little bit strange. That reminds me of that Wii accessory where we're supposed to take your pulse.
Did it ever come out? Was that the thing with it, that it never came out?
I don't think it ever came out, no. The single AA battery, this is kind of also pretty interesting. It did not fit into the console itself. It fit into the detachable cover. And this forced players to never misplace the cover, because then you wouldn't have the battery power to actually power this thing.
Yeah.
Now, how was the battery life? Well, Bandai promised a 30-hour battery life at the 1998 unveiling of the console. And both Wikipedia and Nintendo Life confirmed that monochrome WonderSwan achieved over 30 hours of play from just a single AA battery. The WonderSwan Color retained a single A battery, but unfortunately that battery life did fall, but not too much, to around 20 hours, which is, a 10-hour drop, but still a lot of time. And this is, of course, due to the color screen. Now, the Swan Crystal, with its improved TFT display, still managed about 15 hours. So you're getting better kind of gameplay and worse battery life. Classic. That's kind of a modern issue even today. The Color model introduced a passive matrix FSTN screen capable of displaying 241 colors simultaneously from a 4096 color palette. The screen size increased from 2.49 inches to 2.8 inches, and the RAM grew to 64 kilobytes. And then the later Swan Crystal adopted a TFT screen that eliminated motion blur and improved contrast. However, battery life did take a bit of a hit, but remained respectable at that 15 hours. Now, quite a big game library for this thing. Over 109 games were released for the monochrome WonderSwan. The WonderSwan Color added an additional 91 games, and it, of course, is backwards compatible with monochrome titles. Many games were based on Bandai licenses, such as Tamagotchi, Digimon, Gundam, etc. However, there was some third-party support from Squaresoft, Namco, Capcom, and Banpresto. For example, Square remade Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 4 for the Color, and released exclusives like Blue Wing Blitz. Namco delivered Guilty Gear Petit 1/2 and WonderSwan versions of Clock Tower and Gunpei. And the dual orientation design led to unique puzzle and shooter games such as Gunpei and Beat Mania. Now, we covered the Pocket Station, I believe it was last week, and I found something pretty interesting. So the Wonder Wave actually had an accessory. The accessory, is called the Wonder Wave for this thing, and it is an infrared communicator that could actually transfer data between two WonderSwans. However, it's also compatible with the Pocket Station for select Bandai games, which is kind of funny. Now, market performance, Bandai's initial strategy of low price and long battery life did pay off briefly. Early sales captured about 8% of Japan's handheld market, which is a respectable bit of a chunk there. Total shipments across all models reached about 3.5 million units, breaking it down between 1.55 million for the original, 1.1 million for the color, and 0.85 for the Swan Crystal. Unlike the Neo Geo Pocket, the WonderSwan line never officially launched outside of Japan, so no Europe and no North American release there. Now, the US gamers Jeremy Parrish praised the WonderSwan as the ultimate expression of Gunpei Yokoi's design philosophy, noting that its failures stem from poor timing and Bandai's conservative strategy rather than hardware flaws. And from Kotaku, Luke Plunkett said it considered it a much sterner challenge than most handhelds, but also a localized niche. The WonderSwan is remembered as a what-if moment in handheld gaming history. Its dual orientation idea resurfaced in later models like the Nintendo DS, where titles could be held book style. And I thought because of this, I personally, I was like, man, like, what is this thing? So I thought it was going to be more of like it didn't mention it was a clamshell, but I didn't really understand what it meant by like, you could turn it each other way. This thing looks like one of those things you would buy in today's market at like the dollar store, where it's like, runs on a watch battery, kind of has like a monochrome display, and it has a bunch of buttons, and it's like a single game. Obviously, this thing's much more advanced than that, but it looks like one of them. And the button layout's kind of crazy. Like there's like kind of like two, I'm going to call them roughly D-pads, and you can see how you can like kind of turn it either way. But I thought there was like more of like a hinge or a buckle in the middle of it or something like that. But that's not the case. The design is a lot more sort of simple, but yet kind of cool in the fact that you can hold it either way. And this thing actually has quite a bit of collector value, especially if you're a fan of Gunpei Yokoi, because this is his final hardware project. And that's it. That's two handhelds that went head to head with the Game Boy and lost. You are muted, Ryan.
Sorry. You know what's interesting is I think I might have brought it up on the podcast before, and you and I have talked about it. How Bill Gates once said there's like two major platforms can exist in the market. Was there a competitor to Game Boy? I know other things tried, but there was no other, to my knowledge, like handheld device that was a serious second platform.
I'm
I mean,
thinking Game
you
Gear,
can.
right?
How long did Game Gear last? Like,
I
because the
don't
Game Boy
know.
had like several generations, and then it became the DS, and I guess you could say the PSP was a competitor at that time.
PSP for sure. PSP especially, the PSP, especially the 1000. Well, I guess it's a competitor all along because Nintendo had various devices, including the DS and such, during the PSP's lifestyle. I don't know the exact like timeline as to when everything lines up. It's a good question though, because they ended up cannibalizing their own. Like Nintendo basically dominated the handheld market, and then they said, all right, we're going to cannibalize our own market that we created and created the Switch. And now they don't have, of course, like a DS and then a home console. They have just the Switch. And so they kind of showed up, kicked ass, and then
Yeah.
just like kind of ran off those coattails until today, really.
Right, yeah. That is an interesting move by them to like basically kill off their I don't know which you consider killed off, their handheld market or their home console market, because it is one and the same. I guess they kind of killed both, but made a new market of this hybrid unit.
I personally like, and like this is probably just like personal preference or opinion. I almost say that they more so killed off their handheld market, because the handhelds, short of with special adapters and things, could never go to the screen, whereas the Switch, you can just leave it docked the whole time. And in fact, actually, mine's never been docked. Mine's always been in handheld mode. I've never taken the Joy-Cons off of it. So, like, it's definitely like a matter of opinion. You're kind of like splitting hairs a bit there. But I would personally say, because of its power and its lack of pocketability, it's more of a home console and less of a handheld.
Yeah. You'd probably see more people out and about playing a DS than you'll ever see them playing a Switch. It's just a little too big and bulky to kind of be really that kind of portable.
Yeah.
Like a Game Boy Color or like even when they went smaller with the Game Boy SP, those literally just fit in your pocket and you could just go wherever you wanted.
Yeah.
Particularly if you were wearing cargo shorts at the time, which is the style of the time. They could just you could put them anywhere. But it's yeah, Switch is especially the Switch too. Yeah, you gotta go be doing that intentionally. You have to say, I'm gonna go to this coffee shop with my Switch and play it there. It's not just something you whip out because you're bored, you know.
Well, the thing I think of I used to go to college. We used to go to Fan Expo, or even if we just went to Toronto, I would bring my DS, my 3DS, because I would get the street passes. It
Yeah,
was very much a
that was
thing that
awesome. Yeah,
it was supposed to be. You're on the go. You're just quickly flipping it open, and even if you're walking around still, I mean, you probably should watch where you're going, but many people wouldn't, including myself.
yeah.
And you would open it up, and you would check your street passes, and there was even like a different type of street pass because there was the ones where you would communicate with local people walking by with other DSs with the green light. But I remember there was like another one with the blue light, whatever that was. I think that was like if you were walking around, there was something else. I
Didn't
can't remember what that was now.
didn't the Vita try to do something similar? Do you remember
Nears, the Vita
that?
Near.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Holy crap. I don't know if that worked in the same way.
It had that wake up alarm, the community wake up alarm as well.
And I feel like the Vita was just too power hungry that you couldn't really just keep it on in your pocket for very long while it was like scanning other Vitas.
I never had much trouble with it. The thing is though, is I tried Near a couple of times and I never got any Nears. I think maybe I got one time.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, like I'm just not gonna bother.
Yeah, off the show we were talking about like the PSP Go and we're kind of trying to figure out why it failed, and I'm sure people have kind of written articles and looked into why it failed and stuff. I'm curious why the Vita failed. Because the
Uh,
Vita, it really feels like they sat down and said, what did people want from a PSP? And I think we all consider the PSP relatively successful. And the Vita is kind of a better PSP, but I don't think anyone actually views it that way.
I'd agree. It almost feels like it's in a different camp.
Yeah,
It's like PlayStation 2 to PlayStation 3, it's obvious that one is iterating on the other. I feel like PSP and then PlayStation Vita, it just feels like it's a totally different device, a totally kind of its own siloed device, which it kind of isn't.
it had the two thumbsticks that people wanted. They were like more proper analog sticks because they were raised. They weren't like this flat 3DS kind of thing.
Yeah, the little nub or whatever.
Yeah, the triggers were a little better. It had a much better screen. Did it have an OLED model, or am I imagining that?
Yes, OLED model's the original, and then and then they went
Holy
to
crap, that's
they went to
right.
a lesser screen in the 2000.
That was goddamn early for an OLED, right?
I was about to say that fucking screen is awesome too. It looked so good back in the day.
That must have cost a fortune though for them to put that in there.
And that's why I paid a
Was
fortune for the Vita.
well, is that why the price was too high at the launch, and they could never recover because once the launch is over, it's hard to build momentum for it again.
Well, they had a lot of people will say the main issue with the Vita was the smartphone, and that is probably true-ish.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
But another problem though is Sony was still stuck in their ways of proprietary memory. Like I was using the shit out of my Vita. I had a dock. It was on my coffee table. I just let it sit on the table, and just it had like kind of like a standby mode where it would show you like notifications, and it would have a clock and all these things.
Yeah.
And I just like let it sort of exist there, and it even had like a notification LED on the PlayStation button.
Hmm.
The point is that I used it so much that I started running out of storage space. And then it was like, oh, great, I have to buy one of these stupidly expensive proprietary memory cards. And it was at a time where I think things were starting to become more or less proprietary, more standardized. It wasn't quite there. You would still find many examples back then of things that were not standard, but it became a problem, right? Because it's like, oh, great, I have a proprietary charger. It's not micro USB, which was very common at the time. I have a proprietary memory stick. I can't just use an SD card, which SD cards / micro SD cards were very, very popular in cell phones at the time. And so it's like, oh, great. So I can't use that either. And so I got to bring another cable with me and things. And I feel like those didn't help it either. Like the price, the proprietariness, like it certainly didn't help it.
So I just went and grabbed my Vita, and I'm just kind of checking it out.
Is
So
that a
I think,
1000?
yeah, pretty sure. I don't know how you tell.
Can I see it? Just hold it up. That's a 1000.
Several things I would like criticize it for right off the bat. Um, It has the analog sticks, which are nice, but it's shrunk the size of the face buttons and the D-pad. And so those feel less as good. The
I
D-pad on
I
the
love those face buttons
PSP,
though.
on the Vita,
On the Vita, yeah, I really like them for some reason. I like the clickiness.
they're nice and clicky, sure, yeah, but they're smaller. And then the D-pad is pretty awesome on the PSP. And I don't know, it's pretty good on. I don't know. I, some people are sticklers for D-pads. I'm not really. As long as it makes like a confirmation click, I'm pretty good with it. The OS kind of sucks. These little bubble things kind of sucks. I
You don't
think
like
they
the
were
bubbles?
well, I think they were going for like the iPhone thing where it's like we need to have app icons all over the screen. When the PSP was just basically a PS3 operating system. And I think they probably should have went more with like a console route for that. I'm not saying that led to the lack of sales, just a personal preference of mine. And then I think yeah, it was probably priced too high. Do you know what the launch price was?
No, because I bought the early edition, so I got it a week early.
So I think the OLED they swung for the fences. That's awesome, but that might have been too expensive. They probably could have dropped the camera too to get rid of some of the price.
There's two
You know,
cameras. There's a selfie camera.
right? So in a world where you're buying an iPhone for like I don't know $700 or whatever it was back then, this thing would have to be I think cheaper to justify it. And then this also had had proprietary storage, right?
That was one of my complaints is that I actually bought the most expensive memory card
Where the hell does it
and
go anyway?
it was like 100. It was like super super expensive. There's two on the PSP 1000. There are two doors at the top. One is for games and one is for the memory card, I believe.
Well, mine has a port on it.
Here's just
It's
a
a
port on it.
it's a port. If you can see that. Oop, oop.
Yeah, you're holding up to the camera just for the listener. I don't. I thought maybe
The
it's
other
in.
one,
Is it in? Is there two slots in the PS Vita game thing? I swear, I thought it was up top, but I could be wrong.
no, just a main slot for the game.
What the heck? Is it
Is
maybe
there
is it on the
not one?
side? No, there is. There is for sure because I remember buying it. It was super expensive.
Oh, there it is, the bottom.
Bottom.
You
Shoot.
can't really see it, but yeah. But that's
Too
a
many handhelds.
proprietary storage again, right?
Yes, proprietary. Yep.
And then
Sucks.
also on top of that, the PSP, the PSP itself just feels like a higher quality device. It feels nice and compact. It feels solid. This feels weight or airy and like loose almost. It's
Yeah.
not. It is solid, but it doesn't have that premium feel to it. Oh, they could have dropped the touchpad on the back too.
Yeah. Although
That could have saved some money too, though.
they use that because they only have two sort of top buttons. They only have an L1 and an R1, and then if you want to remote play, your L2 and your R2 are on the back of the touchpad.
Yeah,
I will say that thing, like I definitely see what you're saying, where it doesn't feel as high quality. But I had
yeah.
mine was on a table, it collapsed and it smashed on the concrete, and that thing
Mhm.
it's just fine. Like it's got some dings on it, although I use the shit out of it everywhere.
Well, that's what I'm
But
saying. It feels like it's nicely made, but it's for some reason it feels like there's air in there or something. Like it's almost too light,
right.
and like this is heavy, and it just feels like you got a nice piece of hardware in your hands. Um, but I mean, I imagine you kind of want to go for portability or like lightness when you have a portable device. It makes sense to want to do that, but I think it makes it feel cheap.
I would also say the Vita is not very pocketable,
It's too little too big, little too big.
and the sticks because they're raised will get like janked in your pocket in different directions.
Yeah, man, it's nice looking though.
I even like the OS. I don't know. I liked the bubbles weirdly.
I don't know. It's goofy with like the sliding the pulling the page peeling the page to like close apps and stuff. It's weird, very bizarre.
Well, did you ever use it as a desktop? Like I said, I had it on my coffee table, just in the dock, and it would just sit there and tell me the time and date and stuff, and would tell me the odd notification or whatever,
Mhm.
and then I would just like I used it very much as like a companion / gaming device,
Right? No, I never did that. No.
and the OS felt good for that use case myself.
Mm.
Well, you guys were saying, I remember in the earlier days of the podcast, we'd come and we'd obviously be setting up at your house when we did it in person, and several times it was brought up like, is anyone actually using their Vita? And like I was using my Vita every day, and I remember you kept saying like, how are you using this thing every day? it's always there. If I'm sitting there and I have 10 minutes, it's just sitting there ready. It's charged. I pick it up, start using it.
Yeah, you seem to be able to jump in and out of stuff pretty easily.
Yeah, I jump in and out of like 4 or 5 PSP games at a time.
Yeah, that's crazy. All right, thank you, Matt.
Well, thank you, Ryan.
Crazy learning about all these little devices that lost to time, I guess, in a sense.
Well, what's actually really sad is I was on timeextension.com and the name of the forum escapes me at this exact moment, but a very sort of key game history forum just shut down. And so while I was looking for inspiration for this, unfortunately, one of these like big, like, kind of a wealth of knowledge. If you're looking for a specific power adapter or like whatever, people on this forum would like talk about, oh, this is where you get this type of power adapter for this like obscure console or what have you. And that's apparently gone. And it's because of the hosting price, apparently. Here it is. I just found it on timeextension.com. Digital Press. So yeah, unfortunately, the forums there have died. The Digital Press forum, and so they're looking at options to potentially revive it or keep it archived somewhere or something. But people are saying that like a bunch of like sort of like kind of critical chats if you're into older consoles or obscure consoles.
Mhm.
In fact, the picture that they have here for the heading of the thing, I don't know if this is from Digital Press. This is just sort of a picture they have. Has I believe this thing's called a gizmondo. I don't know if you know what a gizmondo is. I think we did a fun
No.
fact on it like years ago. A gizmondo, now that's an obscure ass device. And that's right in the center of this image here.
All right, let's move on to the top stories for the week.
Let's do it.
Xbox Game Pass for Discord Nitro subscribers officially announced. This is from IGN. Xbox Discord have now officially unveiled the new starter edition of Xbox Game Pass, available to Discord Nitro subscribers at no extra cost. Today's reveal comes a month after newly installed Xbox boss Asha Sharma confirmed the companies were working closer together than ever on a fresh offering for fans. Days later, the first mentions of an Xbox Game Pass Starter Edition then began to pop up. Both Xbox and Discord still refer to this Game Pass flavor as a, quote, Starter Edition, while avoiding making the label official, such as like Xbox Game Ultimate. I don't know what that means. Still, the slimmed down offering is what fans have been expecting, a catalog of 50 plus classic games with more titles added over time at no additional cost. These include Grounded, Stardew Valley, Hades, DayZ, and Cities Skylines, as well as Dishonored 2, Fallout 4, Gears of War 5, Doom Eternal. This appears to align the package with the smaller scale catalog available to Xbox Game Pass Essential members. Other recent changes include the ability to directly jump into Game Pass games your Discord friends might be playing or streaming. Game Pass subscribers will soon also get 250 Discord orbs and a 1.2x multiplier when completing quests. So this is kind of odd. It's like it's more a benefit for Discord than for like Game Pass subscribers. But I just think it's like, is this muddying it up again? Where you now have Essential and now Discord starter kit thing?
Well, I was kind of thinking that too. I was a little concerned about that. Is you're starting to get too many tiers, too many little offshoots. However, what I kind of thought was weird about this was I thought that this was going to be a partnership that was both ways. I thought it was going to be if you have Game Pass, maybe Ultimate, you would get Discord Nitro. And if you have Discord Nitro, then you would get maybe Game Pass Essential or get a discount on Game Pass, one of the existing tiers, Ultimate or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That was my thought at first when they were talking about a relationship. I guess one thing that saves them from this tier is that this isn't really a generally available tier. This is specifically for Nitro. And so it's at least tied to Nitro. They should have almost called it Game Pass Nitro, really, just to kind of keep it more consistent. But
well, I'm curious what Nitro's numbers actually are. So it's in their interest to try to boost it by offering more value, right?
right.
And this is one way to do that. So it's more for Discord's favor. And obviously, I guess just Xbox kind of shares the revenue. I wonder how many people actually use Discord Nitro, and is it mostly just like the streamer crowd? Like as a normal Discord user, of what benefit is it for me to have Discord Nitro?
I'm sure there's some like there's file size limitations for sure. I think
Oh,
there
right,
might be
yeah.
message length limitations, which are kind of annoying. but I don't bump up against those limitations much, which I mean is an testament to the free tier.
It's already being advertised on their Discord Nitro page too. Nitro now comes with Xbox Game Pass Starter Edition, 10 hours of cloud gaming each month.
I was actually just about to say, I wonder if this is a good little introduction for people who are going to start streaming games, but that's not the greatest 10 hours. I mean, it's not the worst, but
Get exclusive discounts on top tier gaming gear just for being a Nitro member. Unlock orbs with Nitro. Grow your stash with monthly orb drops and a 1.2x multiplier on quest rewards. You can like add like your an animated avatar, profile theme, banner image, and more. Choose from up to 20 plus color app themes. Like it's all just kind of like old school MySpace stuff, but you got to pay for it.
I guess it's because Discord is, I don't know if I'd call it social media, but if you're big into
I think
the
it kind of falls
servers,
into that. It kind of falls into that. It's like a quasi social media like YouTube or Reddit. Although I think people do consider Reddit a social media, but it seems quasi to me.
well, Reddit's almost like a newfangled forum, like a new age
Yeah,
forum, if you
yeah,
will. This is like almost like a new age chat app that has social features because there's communities and things like that. If you're big into Discord servers, then I would totally get it as to why you would potentially want Nitro. I think Tim has Nitro, for example, or at least did there for a while. And as a streamer, I'm sure he gets good benefits for his server and things.
yeah. There is Nitro Basic, 50 megabytes upload, custom emoji everywhere, anywhere, unlimited super reactions, special Nitro badge, and a profile. That is $4.49 a month Canadian, or $40.99 per year. But there's also Nitro, like I think just general, the regular Nitro. That's $13.99 a month, or $135.99 a year.
I I personally think that's too much, but then again, I don't use a million and one servers and all kinds of things in Discord. Like I run a fairly successful server myself for work and things, and I am in some servers and I definitely use it to talk and stuff, especially on the console crossplay and all that. I definitely
Yeah.
use Discord, but I personally like what would be the price for you? Like, would you ever buy Nitro with your use cases?
No, I only use Discord for like you guys and like, it's just our one chat group basically. Or I guess you, me, and Tim, and then the Max Rebo group. That's basically all I use it for.
Yeah, so you're like a free tier user. And then I guess the cross platform chat if we're playing Black Ops because you play on PlayStation now.
Hmm. Right. I think my Xbox is all screwed up. A small part of me wants to buy a new one just to see if it actually works.
But you're only having trouble with Activision games.
Well, it's just the two games that have had issues. Yeah.
You should what would be a good check is if you're worried about the hardware or something is I would almost say reach for a AAA game on Game Pass. Just download it and try to play it for a little bit and see if it starts having issues because that'll tax the hardware and see if it's actually the hardware or if something else is up.
Yeah. Thankfully, Best Buy does have them in stock.
Hey,
Finally, eh?
wonder if that's something that she would have addressed or is going to address, Sasha, where you just can't seem to find
Well,
them.
it's weird that Phil Spencer would let that even happen. Now, maybe that's the difference between, a gamer focused guy running Xbox and maybe someone who's more into the weeds of supply chain and stuff, you know.
Well, the thing that I wouldn't have liked if I worked at Xbox and I cared about the sort of sales of the hardware itself is I would be against EB Games slash GameStop giving away my shelf space. And I'm not blaming that on GameStop or blaming that on EB Games. I'm saying like Xbox needs to, in my opinion, have that presence where when you walk into a game store, which is a rarity for many people these days, but if you walk into a game store, I'd be pissed if I was from Xbox and I'm like, why is there only Switch and PlayStation here? And
Yeah.
if there is an Xbox section, it's this tiny Xbox section.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not blaming EB Games for that. It's because clearly, they're having trouble selling or whatever the reason is. It's like it's Xbox that needs to fix the issue there. They
Yeah.
need to be uh, I guess, worthy, I guess, of the shelf space. Like, I'd be super pissed. It reminds me of, there's like a local football stadium here that used to be called Tim Hortons Field, but, and then the name lease ran out recently, but it used to be called Tim Hortons Field. And I remember I was talking to someone who went there and they said, oh, yeah, you can only get Tim Hortons coffee at the Tim Hortons in the middle. And I said, well, what about the other concession stands? And they're like, oh, it's some sort of generic brand. I was like, man, if I was Tim Hortons Corp,
Yeah.
I would have like legitimately shit a brick. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? You can't get Tim Hortons coffee throughout the stadium. Like, what do you
Mhm.
mean by that? Like, what are we? Welcome to Tim Hortons Field. Would you like a Van Hoot? Like, this is ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like, and so it gives me the same vibe.
But I just wondered, like Microsoft has always been more of a software company than a hardware company, and one of Tim Cook's big jobs he did at Apple was like really nail down their supply chain. And he talked. I just got finally. I finished that Apple book actually, and in it they mentioned how he somehow calculated the cost of how much money you were losing as a product was sitting in your warehouse and not being sold. Like it depreciates essentially as it's sitting there, and you have to sell it because it's costing you money to hold it there. And so they got it down to like things were only sitting there for like a week or something. And I just don't know if Microsoft has done all of that kind of back end work because they're somewhat new to selling, high volume hardware, right? And the Xbox guys maybe just didn't really focus on that kind of stuff. It's bizarre for the console to just not even be available those several times that we checked. That's very bizarre.
Very bizarre, especially this late in the generation, and not after a big sale or something.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think it had anything to do with streaming?
With how's that?
Do you think that they had any inkling that maybe people would want to stream more than buy an expensive hardware device?
Hmm. I don't think that's really taken off, right?
Well, one thing I was actually going to say is that if you stream from an Xbox, it constantly lets you know that you can install it, which is I find a little bit strange.
Hmm.
But obviously, if you're streaming it from a web browser or something, it doesn't do that.
Yeah, maybe they were kind of trying to push people to streaming.
It would kind of make sense. Hey, buy
That's
Game
kind of
Pass.
crazy.
We don't need any shelf space because you're all online now. You know,
But you kind of want those things to battle it out, though. I would think where it's like we're gonna try our hardest to sell the Xbox console and make it the best place to play games, while also the other team that's handling streaming, it's their job to make streaming the best place to play. You know, and you should kind of want them to fight a bit, actually, in a sense. But to like just give up on on the console and hope that people would go to streaming is kind of crazy. I don't think that's what happened, but
it's just bizarre to me to think what is it that led to the situation of loss of shelf space, barely any consoles available? Like, what led it to that? Because what's also weird about that is if they're not selling, why is everybody sold out? Like, wouldn't it become, oh my god, these retailers have this stuff kicking around, and like you said, it depreciates if it's kicking around. So then, wouldn't retailers be offering bundles and all kinds of things like that?
yeah.
And it isn't. So it's like they're getting so little that what little sales that the console is getting, it's almost like they can't keep it in stock, but due to scarcity.
Yeah, that's right. This is kind of slightly off topic, but I saw that the Steam machine was potentially the price was potentially leaked.
Okay.
Now, I remember, Valve was saying that they hadn't actually settled on a price yet, so this all could just be incorrect completely. But it was like over 1,000 like euros, something like that.
Sounds about right. It's a PC.
Yeah, and then I guess people kind of like were like, oh, that's gonna be a lot. But yeah, you're right. It's a PC, and I think we need to get out of the headspace of this being a console price. And console prices are kind of going to be pushing $1,000 next gen. It seems, if not 1,000 or more.
I think it's going to be between 1,000 and $12.99.
The Steam machine,
No, the next gen consoles.
Canadian,
I don't know. That's a very good question. Probably, probably
1,200
probably
Canadian.
like $9.99 or like $10.79 American, and then it'll be like $12.99 here for that higher end.
The PS5 Pro I paid like $1,000 for it, like 900 something
Here's the thing with the console thing
after
though.
tax, I think.
Well, like So I have a question for you there, Ryan. So with stuff like that, like how I justify purchases a lot is I look at like obviously my finances and like make sure I have the money for it first and foremost. I'm not going to go into debt to buy consoles. So there's your first check, and then I go, okay, well, how much am I going to use it? And I have that thought process, and then how much do I want it as well? How much do I want it? I do all these options in my head, but I don't have a price limit in my head short of something absurd.
Mhm.
For example, if it suddenly jumped from 1,000 that we're thinking to 2,000 or 3,000, I might be like, okay, I'm out. That's
Yeah.
absurd.
Yeah.
But we've been creeping to 1,000. Everything's been getting more expensive. So if I really think about it, okay, maybe this console is going to be $1,000. Maybe I should put some money aside. And I do that for larger purchases. I'll put money aside each month in anticipation, even if it's only putting aside maybe half of the amount, because it'll quote unquote subsidize, my purchase when I actually do it.
Hmm.
But I noticed that some people, and I think you might be one of them, which is why I ask you, have a thing where you're like, that's too much, I'm out.
Yeah.
And obviously I have a limit there, but I think that I don't think about that limit unless it's absurd, unless an absurd level has been reached.
Because $1,000 is like Canadian is still a lot, but it isn't an absurd amount for a piece of electronic hardware because our phones, you and I have been paying like $1,700 for our phones for the last couple of years.
1,200,
Yeah.
2,200. Sorry,
Right, yeah.
$2,200 for
Right.
this phone.
So that's kind of become normal. Now you use your phone much longer than I do.
Yes.
So you're
Yeah.
you're kind of spreading out that cost over more years. And so a console lasts you about, 6, 7, 8 years or whatever it is now. So you could justify it in that sense. It just sucks. It just really sucks.
Well, that's my thought with the consoles is how often am I buying this thing? So like when we bought our Series X, for example, it was around like I'm going to estimate, let's say 750 after taxes. I don't have the exact number in my head, but 700 something. Let's just say 750 after tax in Canada. I'm thinking, okay, well, more than 5 years would have gone by. There was a lot of inflation across the board in Canada, lots of problems that way, COVID, all the rest of it. I'm not saying that all these things are right and that there should have been inflation, but I'm just existing in the environment that I'm in. And so
Yeah.
I think to myself, okay, well, if I want a new console, how much do I think it's going to be? Do I really think that they're going to get give us a handout, quote unquote, or help
No.
us by saying
No.
it's the same price? It's still just 750 after taxes, right?
Those days are
No,
gone. Yeah.
it's going to go up $250, $300. That's the thing. And so I don't consider that absurd.
Yeah, yeah. I guess yeah, you're right. But I guess the problem is like a console used to be, and in a lot of people's minds, I think was like 300 bucks or something.
Yeah, and that sucks to look back and see that 100%.
Yeah, yeah. And then the PS6 came out and it was like $600 and that was wild. And
Right.
I think the Xbox 360 was like around 300 or something like that, right? And then it went to 400 and it's like okay, that's fine. But now we're at like 1,000.
Yep.
And that was like over the course of one generation. Like the PS4 was like 400 bucks at launch, right?
Yep.
That's crazy, isn't it? That's a
Well,
bigger jump than $300 to $400, even to $500.
around the time when the PS4 came out, when you went out to dinner, how much was it?
I don't know.
Like for yourself, $30.
Yeah.
Now it's 100, right?
Wow. No, but
But for many people, it is.
for one person, it's still not $100.
I'd say. Well, okay, you don't drink though. Like if you got like a beer with it, or maybe 2 beer with it, and I know
No,
people say,
yeah.
"Well, then cut the beer out and cut this out." Of course, you can, fandangle the budget. I'm talking about having like a standard meal where you have like your dinner, a dessert, and then maybe a beer or two.
Hmm.
That could be $76, $80, and then you have to then have not a 15 or whatever gratuity. Now it's kind of expected to have 18. So now
Yeah.
the tip's gone up in price as well. So you really could hit $100
Right.
easily.
Yeah.
And so my point is I'm not saying that's right. Because I have had a conversation with people and they're just like, well, that's just because you can afford it. That's not what I'm trying to say. I understand that as prices go up, people get pushed out, and I'm not okay with that.
Mhm.
However, I'm not going to be the guy that somehow changes the economy. I have to exist in the economy that I'm
Yeah.
in,
Right.
and I have to I make choices that allow me, by tossing money aside and like
Yeah.
choosing to budget in certain areas and like just like
No, Matt,
everybody
it's all on
else.
you. It's all on you to save the economy.
Well, no, that's not what I'm trying to say. But what I'm trying to say is like I have been in conversations where people go like, you like it's absurd that you would pay that much, and I'm like, well, no, I just didn't go out for dinner 3 times,
Hmm. Right.
even if it's not 100, even if it's $70, let's say I didn't go for dinner 3 times,
Yeah.
and so it saved me enough money. And if you don't want to do that, then don't. Like that's totally fine.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to our next story. This one's kind of interesting. Xbox's cloud gaming controller leaks, and it's pretty small. This is from IGN. The design of Xbox's upcoming cloud gaming controller has leaked online, and it looks pretty different from your average Xbox controller. New images of the controller were discovered by Technoblog and reveal that it is much smaller than your typical Xbox controller. It has all of the buttons you'd expect on an Xbox controller, but it is far more compact, making it almost closer to a Joy-Con in terms of size. If that's the case, I didn't even think about that. Did you see the pictures there?
Yeah, it looks awesome.
It also appears to have a slight grooves on the trigger, closer to what you'd expect on a regular controller. It's hard to tell if this would be very comfortable for long periods of play, but we have seen similar designs in the past from companies such as 8-Bit Do or Do with the SN30 Pro for Xbox. The cloud gaming controller looks to have rechargeable batteries, USB-C port, and Bluetooth connectivity. The controller will also seemingly be released in 2 colors, black and white. As of right now, it's unclear when the controller is expected to be released, but these kinds of leaks tend to happen ahead of a reveal sooner rather than later. Perhaps this will be part of Xbox's summer showcase with a release before the end of the year. Although Xbox is hard at work on its next console, known as Project Helix, Microsoft has invested heavily into cloud gaming space and has been looking for new ways to support it. Now, what I'm interested in is they mentioned it's Bluetooth, but do you remember the Stadia controller was a Wi-Fi controller?
I do. Yeah, yeah,
Because
that's
they
right.
were saying it was going to be better latency to the server if it didn't have to go through your TV first, you know?
And then there was an update to make it a Bluetooth controller or something, I believe.
Yeah, which I didn't do, so my controller's dead.
I think someone figured out how to get that working.
Not that I was gonna. It was a bad controller, a mid controller. It wasn't. It
I
wasn't great.
I kept my Stadia kit sealed.
Oh, the Stadia investor, eh?
I also don't know where it is.
Oh no. Oh jeez. So, what's the point of this controller then? Just a cheap way to buy it? Like, I bought my LG TV. It has the Xbox Cloud Gaming app on it. I just buy this $50 controller or whatever it's going to be, and then boom, is that the idea?
No, I think this is more for putting it for your phone and stuff, for your tablet and stuff. Throw this in a bag rather than a full controller. That, in my opinion,
But they're
this
calling it a
is
cloud gaming controller.
yeah. But like this would be to me the use case would be more like I'm gonna potentially cloud game on the road, potentially in a hotel room. This is a smaller controller because in the house I can have a full controller. It's not that much bigger, and so I could just use this little
Oh,
guy. I
okay.
like it's more flat. If you notice just from these pictures that the sticks are raised, but they're sunken more. It looks like they're sunken more than a regular controller to make it like more flat. And so like bringing this controller around would be really easy. Throw it in a bag. I would still probably put a case on it, and that'd be it, man. Like that. This is
Hmm.
what I would use. And yes, I know it's a cloud gaming controller, but if it's Bluetooth, I could use this on the Division mobile. I could use this in Warframe mobile. I can use this all over the place. Like to me, this is just more of this is less of a sit at home at the convenience of your living room and more of a, hey, I want to throw this, I want to go traveling. Let's try to save some space.
What's amazing is it's almost like it looks like it's going back to like an NES like kind of era of design. You know what I mean? The flat rectangle with like buttons on it.
Like that,
Um,
the Wii classic controller back in the day.
yeah, yeah. Well, would you pick one of these up just to kind of bring with you?
Funny enough, just last week I bought a case for my controller, my full controller, because I used to just wrap it up in a t-shirt. So no, I'll just bring my full controller
Oh,
around with me.
okay. Yeah, I've usually been bringing my console whenever I go to like our vacation home or stuff. Obviously, I wouldn't do that to a hotel, but you know what would be interesting is some hotels that have like newer TV systems and stuff, they allow you to sign into like your Netflix. I believe some places now allow you to AirPlay to the TV in your hotel room. It would be interesting if you could like just stream games on it. You log into your Xbox account on the TV in the hotel room and just stream games that way.
You could effectively stream your browser in those
Or
Chromecast situations, those air.
right.
Like, I don't know how the iPhone works, but on Android you could stream your whole screen sometimes.
Yeah,
Or
you can too, but that would increase. That's not like a latency free solution.
no, certainly. When you're traveling, though, I guess everything's kind of in flux, right? You're not going to know exactly. But I think that's the benefit. That's kind of the benefit here of not being the Wi-Fi controller. I understand that there were, perks of being a Wi-Fi controller, but being a Bluetooth controller allows you to play like local Android games, right?
Mhm.
Allows you to play emulated games if you have
Right.
emulation on your device, and
Yeah.
then of course anything you stream and stuff. Well, let
So
me
how
ask.
much would you? Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, do you think this is a good idea? Do you think that this little guy is a good idea, or do you think that people would just bring around a bigger controller?
I think it's one of those things where it's like if I feel like they're searching for new players, and I just don't think this is it. I think your average, like if you're a hardcore gamer and you got a game when you're out and about, you're probably going to bring your own controller and not really worry about it. You'll buy a case for it or just shove it in your luggage or something. I don't know if this is actually for those people. Because my first inclination was this is like a going to be like a cheap handheld or a cheap controller to get people to ease that barrier into the streaming world that they want. Because remember, under Phil Spencer, the idea was we want new gamers who don't want to invest in a high cost console, gamers who just want to stream it like they stream Netflix. How do we get those people? And it's like they're not shipping controllers with TVs, so that how do you get them to get a controller? It's going to have to be a cheaper, smaller, you know, thing.
I That's a good question. I don't know. Would a controller be the gateway to gaming though? Like just the controller
It's a
itself?
barrier because like Netflix, there is no gateway. People buy a TV regardless of Netflix, but now they have Netflix on their TV, so there is no barrier to getting Netflix. But a game, you can't just boot up the Xbox Cloud Gaming app and start playing games. You need a controller, and that's a whole extra step that you have to convince someone to go out and buy a controller.
Well, let me ask you a question there. So I see what you're saying, but do you think that this is still a barrier to entry, but it's a less barrier to entry because it's likely going to be cheaper?
I think they're trying something. I don't know if it's. I don't think it's going to work. I think they're trying to see if it works.
Do you think that, because I actually agree with your theory, but my question is, do you think that they should actually bundle controllers with Samsung TVs?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
And now they have a cheaper, smaller controller, just so happens.
You're going to eat the cost. Like it's gonna hurt. I don't think they're going to make money off of the first several millions of TVs they sell with those controllers bundled in. But yeah, I think they have to do something like that.
It's interesting because the thought I had was, would you want to sell, like you go to Best Buy and you're like, I want let's just call it the Samsung One. I want the Samsung One. Well, do you want the Samsung One or do you want the Samsung One Xbox edition? No one's gonna. I think people still wouldn't want the Xbox edition that's bundled with a controller.
Yeah, that's already too confusing. I'd like to just don't give them an option.
Well, no, I think it's because I don't even think it's confusing. I think it's the fact that it costs anything. I think I think you might be onto something here, Ryan, where you're right. Like going to somebody and saying, "Go play games," but the controllers are $100, and then you got to pay for Game Pass, and then you know what I mean. There's like this list of like shit.
Yeah, like you are technically paying for that TV remote, but you don't think of it that way. It's just the cost of the TV. So if it comes bundled in if it comes with the game controller, I think that's great. I think if Apple was actually more serious about gaming in that sense, the next Apple TV, would be running like one of the M series chips, and then they would ship it with a controller.
What if this was your remote? I don't think that's what this is.
No, yeah, because I think people want a standard remote when they're buying a TV. That might hurt the TV sales then.
What if it's on the back? Here's your remote. Bit of a brick, but here's your remote. Flip it over. Here's your Xbox controller.
I don't know, maybe.
But I think that's sincerely a really good point, though, Ryan. I think you're right because I never really thought of that. I was like, oh man, like even even my parents, like they buy Samsung because I mean I tell them to, and then and they'll buy a Samsung TV and I'll go and like help them like update it or whatever and get them all signed in, and they have the gaming hub, and I'm like, man, like even they could play games, but no, they
Mhm.
can't. They
Yeah.
just bought the TV, but they don't have a controller. That's a very, very good point.
I think a lot of it too is still just a stigma around games, and I think I brought it up to you that I think calling it games makes people think it's eternally for kids. You kind of like the idea is like, oh, when you're an adult, you don't play games. It's like you play sports, or you
You
you do
watch
something
sports
else.
or yeah, yeah.
But games sound like a kid thing, even though all humans, all primates, I think, game or enjoy having fun and stuff. Um, so I just feel like people think that gaming means toys, it means childish, it means you're not a serious adult, and that I think that stigma still hurts from people getting into it, right?
What's kind of funny, actually, because I agree with that. What's kind of funny though is their games, like let's say they're playing games, like soccer doesn't really change if they're playing soccer. Golf doesn't really change. There's some minor changes in the pro leagues, and sometimes that trickles down into the sort of amateur leagues or just amateur play as well, or the beer leagues as soccer calls it. Maybe other sports do too. I'm not sure, but it trickles down into those sort of amateur leagues. But video games change all the time,
Hmm.
even the same video game. And what's interesting is they're playing a game that the challenge doesn't really change, just the opponent does, which then in turn changes the challenge. Whereas a video game, the entire parameters sometimes change with updates.
Hmm.
That's kind of interesting how like we play games like you were saying, all primates or whatever. We kind of play games for challenge and for sportsmanship, and I'm sure a bunch of other neurological things that I don't understand. But yet, I think you're right. Is like the because it's games, it's considered a little more childish. But in reality, because of the updates, you could argue that these are better games because they're updated, because the opponents are always changing, because you have, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like the things you're trying to get out of your like solitaire hasn't changed. Like if you're playing solitaire 100 years ago, you're playing solitaire today. Maybe a rule or two has like slightly swapped, but generally speaking, you're playing solitaire. But like you play a card game on a video game, it's like, well, look up Balatro, like a
Hmm.
totally different experience, right? A
Yeah,
completely different experience.
yeah. And there might just be a portion of the population that doesn't want to play video games. It might just be because it's like no one's talking about, oh, we need to grow how many tennis players there are. I'm sure the tennis like factory wants to sell more rackets, but it's not like they're, we got to everyone is a tennis player at heart and they want to grow the tennis, industry. But for some reason gaming industry it's like we need to find new players, and maybe just most people don't actually want to play video games. Movies are very much like a human thing where it's like we've had theater for thousands of years, and you sit down and watch people act out a story, and people are used to that. But a video game is something particularly different than that. That's only part of it. Like the viewing experience is just part of it. You know,
What do you think about the time investment? I think it
that's
ties into what
another
you
that's
said.
another problem too. Yeah,
Here's Crimson Desert. It's 100 hours. What? And it's
yeah,
probably more than that, really. But
yeah, yeah. Most people probably don't want to do that.
I notice too that even among sports goers, the people who will go to the actual games in the stadiums, they're not even watching the whole game. Oftentimes they leave early. I don't want to stick around for this long. It's taking too long, type of thing.
Yeah,
And I don't know. I don't know if I've just become an old man and just sort of like been like, this should be all right. And like I'll just hang around and like
yeah.
it's I don't know. I hang around right to the end of sports events and stuff if I go.
Hmm.
What's interesting though is I kind of wonder if like even a game that they're choosing to go to that's like a sport, like a traditional sport, many of them want to like leave. They want to get going. They want to go to the next thing. And having like a grand adventure inside of a video game, even to us gamers, feels like a lot sometimes.
Hmm.
I can only imagine what it sounds like to someone who are you're like, hey, come play this come play this amazing epic adventure. It's 400 hours. Like 400 hours, like what are we doing here, you know?
Yeah, it's a big time investment.
It's huge.
I wonder if games is more akin to books in a sense, where books are very much a long period of time to finish them. And I don't think most people I just kind of quickly looked it up. It's like And in the US, roughly half of adults read at least one book per year, while a significant portion do not read any books at all.
That's me.
And so I think it's more like books where it's a big time sink and it has to be something that you really want to do, and not everyone wants to do that.
You know what's interesting about books, though?
Mm.
I've absolutely been socially pressured by several different people, whether that be teachers, friends, acquaintances, people I meet at weddings, that I met once and never will see again. If we start talking books, I'm just like, I've never read anything. I've never read anything that I've been assigned, that I wasn't assigned to me. I've only ever read things
Well,
assigned to me, short of childhood books. Every single time, or almost every single time, people will say, "That's a real shame. You really got to start reading this." I've never heard of it. That's a real shame. You really got to play Cyberpunk.
well, I think because there are health benefits to reading, and so there's like mental health benefits to it. It doesn't always make you smart because like obviously you could read a bunch of bad information books or books trying to, make you think one way or the other. But I think just the activity of reading is a good mental exercise.
What's weird though is I have mentioned to people that I will listen to audiobooks here and there, and people who are passionate about the argument of me trying to finally read seems to calm them down. But yet, like podcast doesn't. And my podcasts that I listen to are mostly educational. I actually specifically select things I don't
Well,
understand, and then I click on them
but that's
in
what I mean though.
podcasts.
That's the difference between like learning is good obviously, but it's the reading aspect of actually physically reading the language. And when things are written by a good author, they're written in a certain way that might tantalize your brain in different ways.
Sure.
Whereas a podcast, it's generally people just talking off the cuff, or if it's like a scripted thing, maybe it's a little bit better, but for the most part, it's not as well written as a book would be.
It's not crafted.
Yeah, yeah.
That's interesting because I never thought of it that way. Is that the podcast can be crafted in a certain way where
Oh
maybe
yeah, for sure. There's
there's
some good ones. Yeah,
segments or
yeah.
we're doing a podcast right now where there's segments or there's certain questions that are always asked or even just interview questions that were sent to the interviewee
Hmm.
beforehand and then they were able to prepare. So then those answers are a little bit more put together. But then if the podcast goes on long enough, eventually you're going to kind of get to the meat and potatoes of somebody and they're not going to be able to BS you anymore. And you're going to get like a glimpse, as to what they actually talk like and things. And sometimes it's not good. Like, and what I mean by that is like, there's a lot of ums, there's lots of ahs, there's lots of
Yeah, yeah.
hesitations and things like that. Whereas a book, they're not writing a bunch of ums and ahs and they didn't leave their like scribble in there. It's been published. It's been reviewed and drafted and redone. Small like tidbit about reading. I was talking to my girlfriend about this. I I haven't read long form content in so long that I now struggle to read anything that goes beyond two sentences. I
Oh,
get two
geez, yeah.
sentences into reading something and I immediately try to start scanning whatever it is.
Mm,
And I constantly try to correct it and it constantly happens.
hmm.
And then if I force myself to read it, I'm reading the words but not paying attention. It's really bad. Like it's not good.
Yeah. I think a conversational podcast more like ours is probably better for maybe a more social function when you're listening to it rather than like a mental health acuity thing. You know what I mean?
It's a good question. I mean, because we've talked to Adriano, and Adriano will say sometimes when he's working, he'll have the news on or something, but whatever it is, like the news or podcast or whatever, but just for background noise, just for
Yeah.
having somebody talking in the background. And honestly, I do the same thing.
Hmm.
I usually don't do news. I usually do videos that I've seen a million times. Like I'll watch Kitchen Nightmares. I've seen that series a million times. So I'll literally have the same episode on 4 days out of the week. But I'm not really listening or watching it. It's just sort of like there's shit that it's happening in the background that I'm able
Yeah.
to just sort of hear.
Yeah.
But the reason why I mentioned that is to touch back to your mental health that you mentioned. Because like to me, it's like it seems to calm my brain to have like something in the background. I don't know if I don't know. That's weird. Maybe.
Well, that's part. I was just looking up like what are the benefits of reading. One is like stress relief.
I start to panic that I'm going too slow personally. I don't know about you. Well,
I'm a
because you
slow reader. I'm a super slow reader.
and does that stress you out?
No,
That doesn't stress you out.
why would it?
I don't know. It stresses me out.
The only thing that stresses me out about it is like the backlog. It's the classic backlog, not reading fast enough because I got 1,000 books I want to read. But it bothers me less in books than it does in games.
Okay.
But anyway, all right, let's move on to Query Corner question. Is making a big return here. Today's Query Corner question is: when an official service or game is about to shut down, should there be a mechanism to hand that service over to a preservation group or something to kind of keep it alive? And we're not just talking like games as a service. We're just talking like anything really, right? Any kind of game that requires the ability to keep playing it, right?
Well, I have an example actually, and it's not a specific game. It's actually a bit of an infrastructure thing. So, remember, Sony wanted to close down a section of the PlayStation Store, and it was for the PSP and the Vita, and I think maybe the PS3 as well, or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, some legacy consoles were going to kind of get their stores kiboshed in some way, and there was quite a bit of backlash, and they did actually go, okay, fine, we'll lament this, but there's going to be some limitations. And one of the limitations, as it is if you want to buy a digital PSP game, how I understand it, and maybe there's multiple ways people get around these things, but how I understand the official sort of way to do it is you have to use a web browser or a modern console like a PS4 or PS5. You have to add money to your wallet, your PlayStation Store wallet. Then you have to go onto a console such as a PS Vita and or a PS3, I believe, and then you can purchase PS1 classics from those storefronts because they don't appear in the storefronts of the PS4 or the PS5. You can then purchase from that storefront on the PS3 or the Vita, and then you then have to transfer that to like your PSP, like to your, because the storefront for the PSP is completely closed down. So, for example, you might purchase, let's say, Daxter for the PSP. You could download that to your PS3 and then connect a USB cable and plug it into your PSP, so PS3 is connected to your PSP, and then you're able to transfer Daxter onto your PSP. And that's like a bit of a rigmarole way. Now, props to Sony. There's a way that exists that, allows for support. Is it, the most smooth thing? No, but it is a legacy thing. But dang well that there's someone out there that's probably like, just let me run a basic storefront on the PSP. Like, allow me to, do this. And my thought immediately went to, well, why not? Like, should there be a mechanism there that allows Sony to say, I don't want to do this anymore. I want my hands washed of this. In other words, I'm going to make this, whether it's open source or there's some sort of legal mechanism where they hand it off to a game preservation group and they go, you run the legacy PlayStation Store. Through this mechanism, I cannot be legally sued. I'm not the one supporting it. I'm out, and that's it. Obviously, this is easier said than done, but my idea is that these legacy groups, which are very dedicated and make modded things, they are reconstructing, let's say, PlayStation Home just from caches from people's PlayStation 3s and stuff. Very dedicated. They would have so much progress. They'd be able to get so far if Sony was like, here's the code base for the thing I don't want. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And then they start at, okay, this is, what do we need to do? We got to have better security because that's why you don't have credit cards on the older console. We got to have better security, or maybe we need a web portal where you can add to there. And then, okay, let's make a modified version of the store so that it works on a PSP Go and a PSP 3000 and thing. Okay, let's start, like the community will self-figure it out, if you will. Because these game preservation folks are very talented and very able. And I think that would be cool. Now, a bit of a utopian idea, but what's that movement, Ryan? It's like the stop shutting down games or something, stop killing games, I think.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
It's like, it would be cool if there was a mechanism there for legacy technology where you go, okay, this has reached a point in its life, or you're maybe able, as the manufacturer, the original developer, to say, this is now considered legacy, and I'm now handing this off into the community who wants it. And I don't know what the mechanism there is legally or even technically, but instead of there being sort of a legacy team at Sony and you're forcing them to do it, and then that, of course, causes all these problems of them being like, well, now I can't spend money on new games and you guys want new games, and I'm spending all this money keeping the PlayStation Store up for these old consoles that we don't want to do. And there's always these arguments. It's sort of like, here, community, if you want it to stay alive, do it. Because we're already doing it.
I think there are several things why Sony probably would never agree to something like this. It probably would have to do with A, they want control over their purchasing like stuff, right?
Sure,
Um, and you're probably right. They need some legal mechanism, I think, to like wash their hands of liability. So if you're accessing this wacky store, this game preservation store on your PSP or whatever, Sony would need some legal protection from like any kind of issues or stuff like that. You're right. And then on top of that, I think there is a part of it where they don't want to keep selling games on the PSP store. They probably want to reserve the right to like have some PSP game make its way to PS5, right?
sure, yeah.
And so I think they probably have an interest. The only reason they kept selling it on Vita and PS3 was because like people got angry and they're like, okay, fine, we won't do it. But they probably secretly want to. You know what I mean?
You know what though? I wonder, because one thing I was thinking of is if you're a more modern gamer and you're like, I'm going to buy a PS5, you buy a PS5, you're playing on there, and you have a sort of dose of nostalgia or like a thought of nostalgia, and you're like, man, I'm really nostalgic for Daxter on PSP, just kind of zooming in on that game,
Right.
even though I've never played it. I really want to play Daxter. Like Sony putting it on the PS5 gives you, as that sort of modern gamer, of which many people are, the ability to play it on modern hardware that you already have hooked up, and that's great. And you're still going to buy it, right? You're still going to buy Daxter, or you're going to buy that PlayStation Plus tier that gives you that classic collection that allows you to play Daxter. So
Yeah.
Sony's going to make their money. The thing is, though, is that there's this retro crowd of people on the PSP, on the PS Vita, on the PlayStation 3, that it's inconvenient to get those devices unless you've been on one this whole time, right? Like you don't go into an EB Games here and just say, I want a PS3, and they just have one. But you can do that with a PS5, right? You can just go in there and get a PS5 pretty well anytime. And so I would almost say that I see what you're saying, where they obviously want that control, and I get it. But would this be, well, if the Stop Killing Games group or whatever it is, organization, if they were able to like get legislation passed where it's like you can't shut down servers for maybe it's a certain amount of time, or you can never shut down servers or something. It like to me, it always feels weird when it's like, okay, Sony, you made Drive Club. Now Drive Club must be live forever, even if it's one player every 5 years. These servers must remain. And then it's like, oh, great. So like now what? And even if they move to a model where the servers are offline and the servers like auto boot when someone tries to log in, right? So like save
Mhm.
electricity and things. You still have to have someone to invent that mechanism and go back and do that. But the community is passionate enough to do that. And so wouldn't Sony be like, I actually don't want this legislation to touch me? Like, would that be enough of a forcing thing to say, you know what? Take control of these old things because it's inconvenient enough to use a PSP. We've moved
Mhm.
on from the PSP.
I don't. Yeah. Well. Yeah. You probably don't want the legislation to like force Sony to keep these things alive, because it's like I don't know if that's really the way you should go. But there should be legislation that Sony should like make available the ability for someone else to like they're obligated to like negotiate with someone to like take on the um take on whatever that project is, or whatever server or whatever it has to be.
Like I'd almost wonder if it's something where you would have to have it be mutually respectful. So for example, it would be something like, okay, you get to run the PlayStation Store. Okay, great. Or even if we zoom in on a game, hey, you're going to run Drive Club for us. Like, or like, hey, we don't want to run Drive Club anymore. You give it to this game preservation group, whatever. Sony washes their hands of it. They're like, I can't be sued, for what you do at Drive Club. And there has to be some sort of banner placed in Drive Club or whatever, right? There'd be some like framework here where it'd be like, hey, everybody, just let you know, Sony no longer runs this. It is now in
Yeah.
in legacy mode or whatever. So there'd be some regulation there. But then if Drive Club generated money inside of a store, a digital storefront,
Sony
I
would have to get a
think
cut.
I think Sony should get a royalty. I think they should actually get a royalty.
Well, they should get their whatever they would normally make, but then share like the resale or whatever they would, like with any other digital storefront. They
Well,
end up paying 30% to whoever or whatever.
do you think that they should still get their cut when they're not doing the same amount of work? They've surrendered it. They've chosen to surrender it.
Okay, well, okay, maybe not in the maybe not the same cut, but whatever that would be, you know,
Mm-hmm. Because the game preservation group, like
they need a cut.
oftentimes they're not paid, but like if they're doing a bunch of work, like of
Yeah,
course they should be paid. I just think it'd be a cool way because even if there was a mechanism there where we say, you know what, this is open source, and there's a term we use in programming called like forking. So you might say like, I'm going to take Drive Club in this direction. No, I'm going to take Drive Club in this direction, and then you have all these different Drive Clubs, right? Like Drive Club Legacy, and then someone will come up with a name for it. 2026, and this one person is Drive Club London or whatever. And so then you might be like, man, Drive Club London is sick. This is so good, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then like that person could actually make some money. Sony gets their money, and then Sony doesn't get, slammed with this legislation, assuming it exists. And they also don't get as much flack, I would hope, from the community, because it's like, we're putting this in legacy mode, everybody, walk away.
mm-hmm.
And really, it like one of the concerns with Steam is that if Steam were to shut down, you lose everything. Because everything is DRM'd and everything, you lose these collections of games.
Right.
But something like that, like that's actually like a lot of like wealth lost, actually. Even though games kind of like diminish in value, other than Nintendo games, apparently. Games like diminish, like their prices go down and stuff. That's still a lot of wealth lost if Steam were just like, I'm out. But what if it was something more like, okay, everybody, it's in legacy mode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd all be for it. I think it'd be awesome. I don't know if any company would actually want to do it, but I think it's awesome. I would love that, because they even talked about with like online shooters and or online games in general. It's like, why not just switch it over to peer to peer? Yeah. But then there's still the issue of like stores going down. Like let's say like Destiny shut down, right?
Yeah.
But you still wanted to play it, and you still want access to those skins or whatever was in the shop. But now that's all gone. You can't access that, right?
Yep.
But it would be cool if there was a way to still do that if you still wanted to buy those things,
And that for games that were as popular as Destiny, you would have people come out of the woodwork and be super passionate about it, and they would keep it up, and they'd probably have cool things like play Destiny at any version you want. You want to go and play the original campaign of Destiny 2, even though it's vaulted. We don't have that in, Destiny Legacy or Destiny 2 Legacy. Like you can do what you want. And then Bungie still gets the cut. And, there's a mechanism there. Bungie still gets that cut of any skins you bought or whatever. But then you can circumvent. It's like the private servers that we see for GTA 5. I think they've all been shut down now, but back in the day, WoW had a bunch of private servers that, had unique rules that people loved and things.
Mm-hmm.
And the Star Wars Galaxies, I watched a guy play Star Wars Galaxies on YouTube recently, and like there's private servers for that. But like, how much further would these private servers be if somebody literally from whatever the Star Wars Galaxy dev was just literally like, we're done with this. Here you go. Yeah. Here's the source code. Here you go. But like, there's a bunch of copyright protections involved here. You guys can't make a Star Wars Galaxies 2. You can't do that,
Would they have the right, though, to take it offline if they wanted to make, let's say the original Star Wars Galaxies guys wanted to make a sequel, and they didn't want people playing the original to take away from potential sales of the sequel? Or remakes, for that matter. You know what I mean? Would they have the right to remove that stuff?
I would say, like, that's where it starts getting muddy, for sure, because it starts becoming a thing of, hey, I'm the one that built Star Wars Galaxies, and I really want you to buy my new product, Galaxies 2, right? Star Wars Galaxies 2.
Yeah.
So obviously I need to well, not obviously, but like you would think, okay, you know what? I'm going to shut down number 1 and get people to buy the number 2, buy the sequel.
Yeah.
But I think that's why like the government comes in, where they're like, hey, you have to, I'm not even sure if this is like the right way to handle it, to be clear. I don't know if the government should be coming in and being like, you should keep things up all the time. That's a kind of
that's
a muddy conversation.
Because like, what if like Sony goes under completely? They're now obligated to spend money to try to make these deals and hand it off to someone else. Do you know what I mean?
Well, no, I see. Like to me, it would be more of a mechanism of like from the in maybe tech that exists currently wouldn't come in. But let's just say a new game comes out, like Destiny 3 comes out in this new preservation law world. You would have like all the terms of service would say like, hey, like, there's a chance that you're buying this from Sony/Bungie today, but if Sony says this is a legacy game, it is now no longer going to be handled by them, and that's how it's going to go. And that happens with apps and stuff. Like people use like launchers on Android, and like the
Hmm.
launchers have been sold to other app developers. And then now, like, maybe you wanted to really support, the 2-person team that built it. And now you've paid for this, you have it on your phone. Maybe you're paying a subscription, and then those 2 people get seen by a bigger business and they sell it. Right. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a rug pull in terms of like who's representing it. So we already have a mechanism that can switch who's representing the game or who's
Right.
representing the software. We already have a mechanism there. I just think that it would be interesting to see, like, in the terms of service from now on, in this utopian world, I guess, this preservation centric world, it would say there's a legacy mechanism here, and this is how it's
Hmm.
going to work.
Hmm. Yeah, it'd be awesome. I don't know if we'll ever see that, but it would be amazing.
Because someone like Bethesda, you wouldn't need that.
Yeah.
Morrowind still runs on modern PCs. Arena does as well, and so does like Daggerfall. So
Right.
like you really kind of don't need it.
Yeah. All right. That's it for the news and the query corner question. Moving on to what we're playing, Matt. You's the
Me,
only one here. What are you playing?
you know what, Ryan? I was just speaking for a long time. You let me know what you're playing.
Not a terrible amount. Overwatch just had its update, and they're doing kind of it's their 10-year anniversary this year.
Ooh-wee.
Coming up quick, I think it's May. It's sometime in May if it hasn't already passed. But yeah, the 10-year anniversary. So I've been playing some Overwatch. They got that crossover with Fortnite. We were going to cover that story, but it's just like it's kind of short just to talk about. But crazy that they're having a crossover with Fortnite, not just because they're competitors in terms of games. It's like, okay, Overwatch wants you to go play Fortnite right now instead of playing Overwatch. It's a weird little promotion, right? It's like McDonald's and Burger King. It's like, oh, you can get a Big Mac at Burger King. It's like, what, you want people to leave McDonald's and go to Burger King?
Well, here's a question though. Do you think that there should be movie skins in games?
Yeah, that's fine.
But you're playing the game, not watching the movie.
But they're not direct competitors in that sense. You might sit down to watch a movie on a Saturday night or something. It's not necessarily taking away from the game. But Overwatch is having their own anniversary event right now,
Right.
and they're saying go play the Fortnite event in Fortnite, or the Overwatch event in Fortnite. They're saying leave our game and go play Fortnite, our competitor.
Right.
I find that bizarre.
It is interesting, isn't it? Especially when games seem to be competing with time. I mean, among themselves, but also among other social media networks like TikTok and things.
It's like Captain Price showing up in Battlefield, and then it's like, what? You know?
Is this a thing? So here's a question. So like we've had days where we log into like Fallout 76 or I never did this, but for like Overwatch or whatever, and we're doing our dailies is the point. And you don't really want to be playing that game. You want to be playing something else. Is this like a little bit of a thing where these game studios are trying to see if sharing the pot makes them more money? Because Overwatch is going to get a cut of those skin sales, and maybe it's enticing to people who maybe logged into to Overwatch and were like, I guess I got to do my dailies. But then it's like, hey, go over to Fortnite, and it's a bit of a thing where they're like, you know what, I actually do kind of want to play Fortnite.
Right. I don't know.
Do you think that Overwatch now, quote unquote, has to have a Fortnite event?
No, not unless they negotiated that, but it's just
I mean,
bizarre.
to keep it balanced to your mind, where you're saying like you're
No, I
stealing
don't
people
think
from
it's not.
Overwatch.
It's not a thing of balance. It's just weird because it's not just, oh, there are Overwatch skins in Fortnite. They're having like an event where you can play in first person mode, and it's meant for you to go play Fortnite. You know what I mean? If it was just the skins, I think it'd be like, okay, that's fun. But the fact that there's an event where you can actually play as the Overwatch characters and play a certain mode is like the bizarre thing.
Is it a demographical difference? Are
I
they
don't
trying
know.
to introduce young people who are on Fortnite, assuming that's who's on Fortnite, to a more mature game like Overwatch?
Hmm.
And Fortnite doesn't feel threatened because the kids are going to grow up anyway.
Maybe, yeah, I don't know.
You're right though. This is interesting. Especially games as a service, this is interesting. If it was 2 single player games having fun, you know, I mean,
Well, that happens all the time. Like Lara Croft shows up all over the place, and like stuff like that happens
you can
for
buy a
sure.
Stalker skin, the Stalker 2 skin in Division 2.
But these are I view Fortnite and Overwatch as direct competitors. That they don't want each other playing each other's games in a strictly competitive sense.
Yeah. It's a very good
But
very
yeah.
very good question.
Anyway, other than that, I've been playing Final Fantasy VII. I think I'm like 40 something percent done. Aaron just finished it. I've been having a good time playing it. Aaron kind of taught me the ropes, and they've kind of latched onto my brain a little more than they usually do. And I working my way through that. We
What
did.
is that? Is it a retro game? I don't know Final Fantasy too well.
It's the remake.
Okay. Okay, so it's like fully
So it's a
modern.
modern Final Fantasy game. I'm technically playing Rebirth, which is the second in the Final Fantasy VII remake trilogy.
Okay.
And there's going to be a third one coming out at some point. They said they're working on it right now. So, but yeah, it's fully modern. It's just and it's taken a lot of liberties, I guess, from the original game on what was that PS1?
PS1, yeah.
Yeah, which I think some fans didn't like, but I have no idea. That's just fun game, fun characters, crazy time. And then we did some Division Resurgence on the. We played it on PC this time rather than our tablet devices.
That's right.
Yeah.
How'd you like that?
Although it's okay, I kind of feel like it ran better on my iPad to be honest.
I have trouble with it on my one tablet, but I did do an update. It is significantly better. I just kind of like ran around just to see, and
Hmm.
my default settings went up by itself. So like they definitely did some optimizing. I'm using an Android tablet to be clear.
Hmm. Yeah, and my iPad has like an M4 processor in it, so it's pretty good. So I might go back to just playing an iPad. It felt a little smoother. It said it was running at 60 FPS on PC, but it just there was a lot of like hitching and stuff. So, what about you, Matt?
Me, so I was thinking about dumping Pokemon Arceus,
Oh,
and then I thought, you know what, I'm not going to do that. So I did one session of Arceus, and goddamn,
no.
does that game have a lot of talking in it? Constantly interrupted by like, hey, go do this. Oh, wait a second, you got to talk to this person. Hold up, you got to talk to this person, and that is still present in my current section of the game. I don't know if it ever diminishes as I progress. However, the game's getting better. I'm starting to understand it better. I'm starting to complete Pokemon in my Pokedex faster. It is definitely still a little grindy and still has a bit of those issues, but I am having fun with it, which is good. Um, I'm in a new region, so there's another camp that's been built. It's sort of like Monster Hunter, where you kind of choose your region, very loosely like Monster Hunter, where you choose your region, then you can like kind of like go to that base camp. However, you can freely, short of level limitations, such as hey, you can't go to this area until you're like level 3 or whatever. You can kind of freely kind of roam the world. So I could just like roam between zone 1 and 2 because I've just unlocked the second one. So I'm starting to have fun with it. I'm starting to get it. I'm starting to get better at like catching the Pokemon. Starting to get better at like the crafting, and by better I mean just faster and just it's more
Hmm.
second nature because it's a little
Hmm.
weird. Uh, it's a little bit strange. My Pokemon are getting their ass kicked, which is a little
Hmm.
unfortunate. And I don't think there's a Pokemon Center because it's like in ancient Pokemon times, I guess.
You gotta use
So
berries or what?
you can use berries and things to get them back up to health. You can make revives. You can make potion with berries, I believe. The one thing though is I don't know how to get their like PP up, whatever the hell that is. Their Pokemon points. I don't know, whatever. Um, Saying PP up sounds horrible too. This is awful. I also don't know where because I just forgot. Like, I mean, it's only been like a week since I played it the first time. I guess a week and a half maybe. I don't know where to change my team, so I have like 4 or 5 freaking Bidoofs. And so if Bidoof is bad against the Pokemon I'm fighting, I'm in real trouble because like my Bidoofs are
Hmm.
just dying. But I caught an alpha Pokemon. That was the last thing I did. Was it introduced me to what an alpha is, and then I ended up capturing him, which is pretty cool. So I'm hoping to like use that as well as my Cyndaquil, which was my starter, to kind of push ahead. Um, the loop is getting better. I'll say this: the loop is getting better, and that's what I wanted. So I think I'm going to stick with it at least for now, and kind of keep pushing that. But what's kind of pulling me away is I received a copy of Mario Galaxy, actually, and so I'm actually a big Mario Galaxy fan. Weirdly, I'm not really like a Mario guy, but I am a Mario Galaxy fan, and I never beat it on the Wii, and so I received I almost said the UMD. I was really trying not to say it. I received the cartridge actually for a gift this past week, and so I'm going to probably get distracted and start playing a little Mario Galaxy because holy fuck was that game fun back in the day.
Mm.
I don't know why I stopped playing it. I think something else came out and distracted me. Probably I don't know, like a Fallout or something. Something just came in and just wiped it, swept me off my feet, I guess. But other than that, I have continued a little bit of Aragorn's Quest on my PSP.
Oh, yeah.
I have started, or I didn't start. I actually found out I already started in the past, but forgot. I've continued Medal of Honor Heroes, and I was playing something else on there too. I'm always kind of playing a bit of Burnout because I do a race or two here and there. I was playing something else on there, and I can't remember what it was. But yeah, I've been kind of chipping away at the PSP project, if you will. Been having a lot of fun doing that. I'm getting into the modding community as well because I have multiple PSPs, so I can kind of be like, this is my OEM one, and this is my modded one, and
Yeah.
you know, this is the one that I throw around. I don't know, whatever.
So which ones do you have?
I have a PSP 2000. That's OEM. I have a PSP 3000 that has CFW, custom firmware. And I have an OEM PSP Go.
Do you think you would want at some point a PSP 1000?
Yeah, it's different enough.
Just to have?
Yeah, I would think so. Because I've never tried it. I hear that, I can't remember if it's the screen is better, but I hear that the grip is better. The ergonomics are better. And you actually have a springy door. All the other versions have a manual door.
Mm-hmm.
And even a PSP Street. I'm kind of like a collector, I guess, of PSPs now at this point. A PSP Street would be cool too, because the whole back comes off. It like reveals the battery, and I think it's the SD card maybe too, but definitely the UMD slot. And like instead of it just being a UMD door, the whole back kind of like hinges open. So it's kind of interesting. It's the cheaper version of the PSP. That came out. But yeah, so I don't know. I've been ripping quite a bit of PSP lately. I've been ripping the handhelds, like I said, with the Switch because I play it in handheld mode mostly, and that's been a ton of fun. And so I've been really digging the handhelds lately. But I think I guess we played some Overwatch. We continued our Space Marine 2 and with Tim, and I think I want to say that's it. But Apex, you know, some multiplayer sprinkled in there for sure. But I think that's been it. I think that's been my week.
Awesome. And yeah, we'll be playing Warhammer Space Marine 2. Probably still, right? I think
You still got about 3 missions left, I think.
Yeah, okay. Twitch.tv/DamonPatchMedia, Wednesdays, 9 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys next time.
Hey, yo. Peace.